Get the over.
Stop pretending you're a police officer.
Law enforcement is accusing myself and my contractors of impersonating law enforcement. Nothing could be further from the truth. Primarily what Metro State does is provide funeral escort services for families and their vehicles for a funeral.
Repo, take this intersection and keep this under control.
One of the things that most people don't really realize, it is against the law to cut into a funeral procession.
Hey!
It can be extremely frustrating when somebody that's not part of the funeral cuts into the funeral.
Blue car.
Sometimes things get very heated.
Get over!
They start yelling at us.
If you're not law enforcement, I'm not stopping for you.
Where we have to mirror the same behavior.
You out of my funeral! Out of my funeral!
Even though we wear the high-vis yellow shirts and we are using the purple flashing lights, some law enforcement still believes that we're impersonating. The uniforms are nowhere near the same or the colors of our lights. I believe that there's certain members of law enforcement that are out to get me. My company has received a total of 86 citations for running red lights or using an air horn. We've gone to court 30 to 40 different times where we won every citation except for one.
Let's get some body footage of the cars racing by.
5 years ago, we started wearing body cameras to protect ourselves from being written inaccurate citations. I personally have been arrested 3 times over the past year.
Just sit tight. Okay.
I was arrested for impersonating a law enforcement officer, reckless driving, and crossing a double yellow line. About a week after that, while on funeral escort, an off-duty officer hit me with his vehicle. While he was cutting in and out of the funeral, I slammed my hands on the hood to push myself away so he wouldn't actually run me over. I was arrested for impersonating a law enforcement officer and assault with a deadly weapon. I believe these are wrongful arrests. I'm due in court very soon. If convicted, I could face up to 85 years in prison. I feel that we've done nothing wrong. I don't deserve to go to prison for telling people to get out of funerals.
Get out of the way now!
I don't deserve to go to prison for impersonating a law enforcement officer when we're not impersonating.
Hey! Stop your vehicle!
Jeremy, how are you?
Good, sir. How are you?
I'm all right. So this is your motorcycle,
Yes, sir.
and you've got 18 of these,
Yes, sir, we do.
and they're all this way, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, and this is, it says Metro State on the front,
Yes, sir.
where that usually says State Police or
Police or sheriff.
something
correct.
like that.
Yes.
And I notice you've got a badge image on the front. It's,
The
that
motor
says-
wings. Yeah, that is
It
correct.
says Metro State here,
Yes, sir.
and it says Vehicle Protection Unit.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, where'd you get this image?
That image was actually one of the images that most motorcycle companies use from funeral escort companies throughout the U.S., and that was one that we used as well.
Well, most motorcycle cops and like highway patrol and all use that image as well, right?
Only in California and another, I think, Ohio. However, most agencies use the shield that they use. Florida
Okay.
doesn't have that logo at all.
All right. And what is this on the side? This is this a siren, a
That's
horn?
the-
What?
That's the horn. That's the bell for the horn.
Can we hear it?
Sure, yes, sir.
Okay. Now, that's not meant to sound like a police officer.
No, sir.
I noticed that this is black and white, like a, you agree this is like a police officer's motorcycle color scheme.
Well, in Florida, most agencies use white or blue or green motorcycles. Black and white is a very rare, almost not found at all law enforcement style motorcycle. So
Yeah.
we went with the black and motorcycles to make sure that we were very different than local law enforcement in Florida.
So you wanted this to differentiate.
Correct, yes, sir. In fact, we went with this style motorcycle instead of a Harley Davidson because Harleys is what's used by South Florida law enforcement or Florida law enforcement. This bike is more of a East Coast bike, and of course, we're not doing funeral escorts in the East Coast.
I'm wondering about the helmet and all of that. Is that necessary? I guess that's for safety.
Of course, yes, yes. The best thing about these helmets is when it's raining, which it rains all the time in Florida, we're able to pull the visor down to protect us from the rain. We have our communication so we can communicate with each other openly. And then we also have our video cameras to make sure that we're properly protected from any kind of things that are stated incorrectly.
And you think you've been harassed a lot by the
Yes.
police down there.
Yes,
Why
sir.
are they picking on you?
My past.
Yeah. Well, what about your past?
Well, sir, once upon a time when I was a very young man, while in the academy, I impersonated a law enforcement officer.
Yeah, but this was like years and
1998.
years. I mean, you were a kid then, right? What,
That is
18 or something?
Yes, sir. Just turned 18.
So they've carried that grudge all of this time, you think?
Well, one of the strong beliefs, which we've found a lot of proof of, is there's a sergeant that is trying to shut my business down behind closed doors because he wants to start his own funeral escort business in the state of Florida.
Okay, and you've got a very successful business, right? He has a
He
business.
does.
And now this is your attorney, right?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay.
This is Amir Ladan, one of the best attorneys in Orlando, Florida.
And Amir, thanks for taking the time to be here.
Happy to be here with you.
And you guys wanted to be here because you want to tell your side of this story.
My company, Metro State, we have a total of 18 motorcycles, 2 of them being trainers, 10 vehicles. We've gone out of our way to make sure we don't resemble law enforcement. High-vis shirts and purple flashing lights aren't used by your local law enforcement. None of those items could be considered to be impersonating law enforcement officers. I'm confused how we can go for years without any issues and see everything that's taking place now. And I scratch my head trying to figure out how we got to this point.
Get out of the way now!
Well, Robert and I were just outside talking to Jeremy, a funeral escort, who says for the past few years he's been victimized by local law enforcement and as a result started wearing body cameras on the job. In 2019, Jeremy says he was pulled over and his footage was confiscated, and he has been living a nightmare ever since. Now, his attorney, Amir, says because of the seized recordings, charges have been filed against Jeremy, and he is now facing 85 years in prison. Now, Jeremy says he's been defamed, bullied, and labeled as a serial impersonator, but the world has it all wrong. You say you did impersonate a police officer back when you were 18. You admit that.
Yes.
And at the time, you were in the Explorer group, which is a track to becoming a police officer.
That is correct. I was doing dual enrollment in high school at that current time. I was in the academy at night, and then I was also an explorer, so I could become a police officer when I graduated high school and finished everything out properly.
Okay, but they took a dim view of that, so that took you off the eligibility list to become a police officer.
That is correct.
Okay. Now, I want to ask about, this is one of the uniforms that you wear, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and this is one of the uniforms that you wear, correct?
That is correct.
And what do the pins on your uniform signify?
Well, we have our motor wings for gentlemen or ladies that pass the motor school that we go through. So that way they can signify that they're part of the motor team.
Right. And Amir, you've represented Jeremy for how long?
At least 5 or 6 years.
Just speaking hypothetically, would you caution someone about choosing a uniform like this to go out on the streets in a black and white or a black and white motorcycle? Just hypothetically, would you think that was thumbing your nose in the face of local law enforcement?
Fair question, Dr. Phil. This particular uniform, which is what they call a Class A uniform, is used typically on special funerals for law enforcement officers, funerals for folks with the fire department. It is not unlawful or improper to dress in that manner, any more so than it is to have a black and white vehicle.
What do you wear on your duty belt?
On the duty belt that we wear, we have our radio. I have a tourniquet. We've come across cars on fire, things like that. CPR mask. I do have a baton. Most of my men and women have a baton, pepper ball, flashlight, as well as close contact mace.
Well, you have handcuffs on here.
No, we don't.
No, I've seen you arrested with handcuffs, where they've taken handcuffs off of your duty belt.
Some of my men and women do wear
No,
handcuffs.
You, not
Yes.
your men and women, you.
That's correct.
Who do you have the authority to handcuff?
We don't have the authority to handcuff
Then
anyone.
why would you carry handcuffs?
Well, if you're doing security or private security,
You're
or
not authorized to do security. Who do you have the authority to handcuff?
you have no authority to handcuff anyone.
Then why would you carry handcuffs?
Again, when you're doing in-house security, that you have the authority to wear handcuffs, you would wear those. Just like any loss prevention at a Target or a Marshalls or a Ross.
But you're not secure. You're not authorized to do security.
Sure.
You're not licensed to do security. You have no authority to handcuff anyone.
On a funeral escort, that is absolutely correct.
Why are you carrying a non-lethal weapon?
For self-defense purposes. And I can answer that because your next question is going to be, why would you need that? We've done funerals where rival drug dealers have attacked each other while on escort. We've also had escorts where family members show up at funeral services that aren't approved to be there, and they've attacked each other to where we have to call the police and have help respond.
Okay. And you say you take great pains to be sure nobody confuses you with law enforcement.
Right. Again, we were talking about this uniform. This is only used once in a blue moon. The 90% of the time that we do our escorts, we're in our high-vis yellow uniforms.
Okay, and you say you would, I mean, you say this just be worn for a police funeral. Have you done a police funeral?
Yes, sir, we have.
And in your community?
Yes, sir. The sheriff's office and the Orlando Police Department did contact me in reference to a rival drug dealer funeral, where they made sure that we were going to be the funeral escort company.
No, I didn't ask you if you, because you didn't say that you wear these for drug dealer funerals.
Okay.
You wear them for police officer funerals. Have you been hired to escort a funeral of a fallen police officer on or off duty, either one, a police officer that has died? Have you worn this escorting a police officer funeral?
3 different times. Yes, sir.
Okay. And you're saying that you wear this so there's no confusion between you and a police officer?
Well, yes, for honor out of the person that we're escorting.
Okay, so
I get your confusion. I think in Florida, the distinction is this. We have Florida Highway Patrol. They wear a brownish chocolate milk colored uniform. No question, this is not an FHP uniform. We have the Sheriff's Office, which statewide wears a very prominent, almost like a Kelly green color. So they're white and green. And then the local municipalities all have their own styles and designs. OPD, which is in Orange County as well, is typically a light blue navy, although they also have different uniforms for different purposes.
but they all have blues, right?
Yes.
I don't know that the...
However,
yeah.
motor officers in Florida all wear white shirts with a belt that goes over their sash. We went to the blues so that way we're not wearing, in fact, when we started the business and we talked to people in the sheriff's office, they said as long as we weren't wearing white uniform shirts, they had no problem. So we went with the blues to make sure that no time would you ever think we were a Orange County deputy or a local law enforcement motor officer who wears white shirts.
Okay. Why would you have a badge up here?
To represent the company's logo and ID.
But why do it with a badge? Because a badge is a icon of authority, right?
All security companies that run these types of details have badging. I mean, I think that's probably a nationwide trend. I don't know the psychology behind it. Certainly, they probably want to connote some type of authority. You're the expert on that. I'm certainly not. But it is not atypical for these companies to have badges, and to have the accoutrement that you see here is not atypical.
If you're taking great pains to not be confused with law enforcement,
Right.
it seems like you took great pains to replicate a law enforcement badge. You've got the same crest around the top, building in the middle, same arc and font across the bottom and under the building, and then badge number across the bottom.
Sure.
I mean,
So in
come
Florida,
on.
I don't mean to interrupt, but in Florida, that's not a law enforcement style badge. In Florida, a 5-point star is highly illegal. A Florida Highway Patrol badge would be highly illegal. And or a badge with an eagle top, which is what's in the statute, is illegal. So we don't have a badge that contains an eagle
We don't have a 5-point star, and we're not using a Florida Highway Patrol shield, which
Look,
is what's
I'm
in the
executive
statute.
producer of a legal show on network television, and I understand what are iconic symbols of law enforcement.
Sure.
This is an iconic symbol of law enforcement.
I feel that my life is in ruins.
A security guard accused of going way too far and acting like a real cop.
The media has portrayed me as some sort of monster. I'm getting about 80 to 100 threatening phone calls a day.
Weirdo. I wonder how many times a day you get phone calls about people calling you out. I can't wait to see more videos of you going to prison, guy. Weirdo.
People saying that they'll rape my wife and kill my daughter and burn my house down. One of the reasons for my appearance on Dr. Phil is to set the record straight, to show that we at Metro State do the same thing that companies throughout the United States have been doing for years, safely, without any issues other than citations.
We have a weapon here. This is a non-lethal weapon, right?
Yes, sir.
This is a pepper ball.
That is, sir. Correct. Yes, sir.
Okay, and these are, people can buy these, and when a consumer buys a weapon, it's got yellow on it. That connotes that this is not a firearm that's shooting bullets,
Correct.
right? Does yours have this yellow on it?
From that company, they make multiple different versions. That one, we have a few of those. However, we also have some that are all black.
Okay. Now answer my question.
Sure.
Do you carry one that has yellow on it?
I carry one that has all black. However, it's in a holster, so you can't see it anyhow.
You can see this.
That is true. Yes, yes, you can.
You could see it.
Yeah.
Why would you not carry one with yellow on it?
I can't answer that question.
Now, Pepperball's mission is to protect life without taking life. And their TCB is known for its effective range up to like 150 feet, right?
Correct. Yes.
And it's also something that you carry
Correct.
on your duty belt, but yours is all black. So it looks the same as a regular firearm.
Well, that's the reason why Pepperball makes their weapons. Although they are for safety, they are also made to be a weapon that is for self-defense purposes.
Okay. Well, let's look at your vehicles.
Sure.
We looked at your motorcycle out there.
Okay.
It goes 140 miles an hour.
That's what the paperwork says. I can't really tell you that. I honestly don't know myself.
How fast have you gone on that thing?
I've had my bike at a higher rate of speed, but I can't really remember.
If you take your Metro State vehicle
Okay.
next to a real police car,
Sure.
you think an average citizen would be confused and mistake this for a police car?
Well, when the lights are on and they're flashing only purple, and it says vehicle protection unit on it, I understand your confusion. I understand maybe possibly a average citizen's confusion. However, we're being put into a position where we have the vehicles for visibility and safety, and the purple lights make the difference between a law enforcement and a non-law enforcement vehicle. One of the painstakes that I have taken was that our vehicles are not all white or all green or black and tan, and they don't have the gold stripes down the side or blue stripes down the side, just like our uniforms don't have the white shirts. We specifically made sure that our vehicles and our uniforms were from another state. Of course, California has black and white vehicles. California wears blue uniforms. But we're not doing funeral escorts in California. We're doing them in Florida. So our vehicles are purposely designed to not mimic Florida law enforcement. We don't use Harleys. We don't use vehicles that are white or with the blue and gold stripes.
This is your motorcycle versus a police motorcycle, and your uniform versus a real police uniform.
Right.
You could pull into that V there. We could put you in the center position, and you'd blend right in, right?
Well, no, our unit says Metro State on it, and it is a BMW, not a Harley. Our vehicles has our names very clearly in bold letters on purpose for a reason, that we're a company.
And you believe that the average person would say, oh, I've got this motorcycle flying up behind me here, but the letters on his windshield are different, and he's got on a different shirt, and so I'm just going to drop the hammer and drive off.
Well, if one of my vehicles were behind a car trying to do something like that, that person would be immediately terminated and no longer to be a part of our team, because we don't get behind vehicles to pull them over, ever.
What are you doing? What does it look like I'm doing, dumb? Get over before you find out.
Stop pretending you're a police officer.
Listen, I know what I'm allowed to do and what I'm not allowed to do. What you need to do is figure it out before you start talking and cutting us off.
I'm not cutting anyone.
Go ahead and pull your little phone out.
I'm not
Do
cutting
your little
anyone
Google search and figure out what we're doing and what
I
we
know what
legally
you're
allow.
doing.
Good. Then back off and give us room.
I'm not interfering with you at all.
You are by
You are
running along.
You've been blocking traffic.
Yeah. I need you to stay to the side, sir. That's what the legal
I'm
law
gonna
is.
call the police.
Go back and look it up.
I'm gonna call the police on you. I'm gonna call
Call
sheriff now.
Please, 911 right
I'm
now.
not calling 911.
Go ahead. Call the 911 right
I'm
now.
not going to call 911.
Tell them
This
it's
is
on
not
video
an emergency.
too.
Let him know all of this.
It's on video. We also
You
have your
guys need to
tag
stop
number.
blocking
So
traffic.
please
Let me know.
Escort you to your
Seriously?
Yes, sir.
What exactly are you thinking there? You're telling him what to do, where to go, called him names, and got really aggressive with him.
Right. Now, if I can explain, I'd be happy to.
I'm
Love to.
all ears.
Please. So that nice gentleman there, what you don't see, because Real World Police edited the videos multiple times to the point where you're missing the 5 other times he's already driven and caused almost accidents in the funeral. Yes, I apologize for my demeanor and my speaking the way I was at that point. However, that was the 3rd time I'd already spoken to him. The first 3 times that I spoke to him that were a little more polite, that at that point was no longer working. To be on the safe side, to keep my family safe, we needed to speak a little differently.
So you're justifying that?
I'm not justifying my demeanor and behavior, and I apologize for my demeanor and behavior, and I do apologize to the gentleman if he's watching for the way I spoke to him. However, the safety of my family is paramount. And when and my other officer has already advised you multiple times that you're in a funeral and you're putting the family in danger.
And you say officer. What kind of officer are you talking about?
My officers that work for me, they're certified with us. They're part of our company.
So you're state certified?
No, we're not state certified.
So who certifies you?
We have a person that comes out and certifies our
Well,
men and women.
what's this person's authority?
They're actually a police motorcycle instructor that comes out and makes sure that we do our riding properly.
And so that's how they trained you?
No, sir. Again, I apologize
Because
for
you're
that.
not a certified agency.
Right.
And you tell people that you are a state agency.
Right, we're a state-approved agency. We have our state license.
No, you're not.
Well, we're not a law enforcement agency by any
No,
means.
you're not a state agency. The state doesn't approve agencies. We've talked to the state. The state doesn't approve agencies.
Right. So Mr. DeWitt's company, though, is registered to perform the services.
Well,
that they
so's a
perform.
hot dog stand, but they don't have officers.
Mr. DeWitt's contractors, I'll avoid using the word officers because I understand where you're coming from. Their contractors have performed thousands of these escorts, thousands and thousands of them. We have a handful of videos where someone, in this case, is being belligerent, but in other cases are just non-compliant. The funeral is allowed to go through a red light as long as it's taken the light when it's green. The entirety of that procession has the right of way, even during the red light. And what this company does is it facilitates the safe passage of all of those family members and the grieving parties to go from the chapel to the cemetery. And it's not inappropriate to advise people to get out of that procession. He's not pulling that car over.
But you know that he does that.
That he pulls cars over?
Yes.
I beg to differ.
Sit tight. What's wrong, sir? What's wrong? I'm sorry?
You guys law enforcement?
Are you okay?
I'm great. Are you law enforcement?
I'm asking you a question. Are you okay?
If you're not law enforcement, I'm not stopping for you.
Listen, if you keep going, we'll figure it out real fast.
Let's figure it out real fast.
Florida Statute 316,
Are
1974
you
says
law enforcement,
we have
sir?
the right of way with
Are
emergency
you law
vehicles.
enforcement?
You need to sit tight, sir.
No, I don't.
You need to sit tight.
Answer my question.
I'm
Videotaping everything
I don't
right
care. I
now.
don't care.
I'll get your tag number if you continue the way you are.
We'll have to take care of the situation.
I need you to sit tight.
Did you let me speak? If you're law enforcement, identify yourself to me. What agency?
We're with Metro State. We're a state certified agency. You sit right there, please, sir.
Do you
Thank you. Come on, man. Get out of the way. I got to deal with this idiot. Move. Sit tight, sir. Please don't continue. Hey, boy. Hey, piece of boy. Boy.
Now, that's directing traffic.
Again, he's not pulling somebody over. I don't mean to split hairs with you, Dr. Phil, but the purpose of his company is to provide safe passage. When these vehicles disregard Florida statute, it's his obligation to inform them. Would I inform them in that manner? Of course not. I'm not advocating for that behavior.
The incident report from the sheriff's office says DeWitt carries a pepper ball gun in a gun holster designated for a firearm that mirrors law enforcement by wearing a uniform with a gun belt, motor wing insignia utilized by law enforcement, 2 black stars on the collar, which in law enforcement represents a law executive of senior staff rank, lights equipped with numerous amber and purple lights. Many have red lenses. Funeral procession only has the authority given him by the funeral director to lead and escort a funeral procession. Nowhere does it give Metro State the right to act as law enforcement and operate outside of the procession directing traffic.
Right, so this report is literally cut and paste several times by this officer for the purposes of continuing, in our estimation, to harass and harangue Mr. DeWitt's company. And in fact, this same officer has actually cited his contractors and Mr. DeWitt multiple times, alleging, among other things, the use of red lights on the vehicle, red and blue in some cases. And if I remember correctly, do your due diligence and verify it, every one of those citations has been dismissed by the court or dismissed by the officer before we took it to court.
You're charged under 843.08, which is false impersonation of a law enforcement officer. There's also some language in that statute that is very specific that says not only can you represent yourself visually as a law enforcement officer, you cannot act as a law enforcement officer. And you know, this is very clear. It says that you're in violation if you take it upon yourself or herself to act in such a way or require another person aid or assist in any manner pertaining to the duty of any such officer commits a felony of the 3rd degree. So you can't represent yourself and you cannot act as such. And when you're walking up to somebody saying, hold it right there, stay right there, pull over here, move on, go forward, you're directing traffic.
Here's the problem that we have. The statute that deals with funeral escorts is a carve-out that allows for certain conduct that would otherwise be in violation of this statute. That funeral escort statute is dated and it needs to be updated. It doesn't address current driving conditions. It doesn't address the circumstances he finds himself in.
But the spirit of the statute still holds true, and it requires him to stay in the procession and not to leave the procession and start directing traffic.
You're absolutely right.
The first paragraph states that we are allowed to facilitate the safe movement. The word facilitate, which multiple judges, in fact, over 50, 60 sometimes in court, have thrown out the citations, saying that us facilitating the safe movement means we can move around the funeral safely and properly, as long as we're exercising due caution and care.
I don't think that includes crossing a double yellow line into incoming traffic at 110 miles an hour, and that's on video with you saying, I just did 110 miles an hour. My wife would not like that.
We'd have to see that one, but yes, sir.
I'm happy to play it for you.
I hope so.
Mr. DeWitt, I don't think condones crossing double yellow lines, and we're going to be litigating that issue in court very soon.
Jeremy is a funeral escort who wants to prove he is not impersonating a police officer. Here's your motorcycle versus a police motorcycle. You have handcuffs on here.
No, we don't.
No, I've seen you arrested with handcuffs where they've taken handcuffs off of your duty belt.
Next, Dr. Phil. Check your local listings.